All right, it is recording now, and I'm going to screen share as well. As soon as I can find it.
Okay, well, so for whoever is a junior parent out there, I'm going to be talking about filling out this year's FAFSA, and we're going to be using 2020 tax information to fill out the FAFSA coming up for the upcoming 22-23 academic year. So that's for the senior parents. If you're a junior parent, you're going to just add a year on. So when the junior parents start filling it out, you'll be using 2021's income or 2021's tax returns, which haven't even been filed yet. So I just want to differentiate there. So junior parents, anything I say, you're going to tack on a year. Senior parents, we are talking right here and now.
Perfect.
So,
all right, can everybody see, I hope? All right, Suzanne, you can see it at least, right?
Oh yeah, nope, it's all good.
All right, perfect. So I'm going to mute myself as well.
Okay, all right. So I have a lot to talk about tonight. Please ask any questions as we're going along, and I guess let's get going. Just a little bit about myself. My name is Suzanne Hanlon. I have two children. One child has already gone through college, and I have a son who is a second semester sophomore. He was at UConn, and now he is at Eastern. So, and I have worked for the financial aid office at UConn for, it'll be 26 years in October. So I've done many of these, and I know the process inside out. So this is what we're going to discuss tonight. So let's move on to the next slide. So first I want to talk about what is financial aid, and financial aid includes grants, scholarships, loans, and employment opportunities for students. And the sources can come from federal, state, institutional, and private funding. So we've listed here a couple grants. Federal Pell Grant, which is a federal grant. Roberta B. Willis is a state grant. And then there's also university grants that you can apply for by filling out the FAFSA and possibly other forms at whatever college your son or daughter is going to be applying to. So I want to talk about the applications for a minute. Almost every school is going to require the FAFSA form. You'll have to go back. But the FAFSA form is the form that you're going to have to complete. But there's another form called the Css Profile, and you also may need to have to complete that form in order to apply for financial aid. So what I'm going to advise you all to do is to figure out what schools or colleges your sons and daughters would like to apply to, and go to each financial aid website and take notes on what forms. Do they want you to fill out just the FAFSA? Do they want the FAFSA and the Css Profile? Do they also have an institutional application? So these are all things that you need to do your homework. I had charts. So I see charts in everyone's futures with school names and what forms are required, what's the cost of education, how much financial aid you're getting, which will then give you a bottom line. So grants are money you don't have to repay. Some grants and students receiving grants is going to be based on an on-time deadline. So that's something else you need to find out when you're out researching the schools and colleges that your children are interested in applying to. You need to find out what is the on-time deadline. UConn's deadline is February 15th. If you have financial need and your FAFSA is completed by February 15th, then we will consider you for university grant funds. If you get your FAFSA to the federal processor February 16th, then your child is not eligible to receive university grants. So on-time deadlines are so important. There's also scholarships out there. When your child applies for admission by filling out the common application to each college or university that they're applying to, each admissions office is automatically going to take a look at their application, their class ranking, their GPA, their SAT scores, if they're considering them, their community service that they do, and they're going to look to see if they're eligible for merit scholarships, money you also don't need to repay. once your child gets to college, they should look to see if there's any scholarships within the course of study that they're studying. So they can check for departmental scholarships. And at this time, it could be a little early, probably not start looking. Sharon, when do you advise like for the local scholarships? Uh-oh, sorry.
I have to unmute myself. For the local scholarships, like our actual local scholarships, we do a presentation in March for those.
Okay.
So those are not for quite some time, but all the regional ones, like the Hartford Foundation for Public Giving and all of those ones, certainly earlier timeline.
Yeah, so you should also start looking, I would say around Christmas time, maybe a little bit after Christmas, for private scholarships. These are local scholarships that are in your area, and also East Windsor will also give a presentation to your students regarding what local scholarships they could apply for. And then there's loans. Loans are money that you do have to repay, and there's a bunch of different loans offered. There's the Stafford loans, both the Stafford loans, the subsidized and unsubsidized. Those loans are in your student's name only. So you don't have your name on them. You're not responsible for repaying. Those would just be in your student's name. There's subsidized if your student shows a financial need, and we'll go over that terminology shortly. And there's also the unsubsidized, which means you haven't shown financial need, and interest would accrue on the unsubsidized, where the government pays the interest that would accrue on the subsidized. Freshmen can borrow up to a total of $5,500. Sophomores can borrow up to a total of $6,500, and juniors and seniors can borrow up to $7,500. And again, that's just in their name. So those are great loans. My son always takes out his Stafford loans each year because the interest rates are very low. I want to say the interest rates for this academic year that we're currently in is about 3%. Okay, so again, that's in the student's name, and repayment does not begin on those Stafford loans until 6 months after your student graduates, withdraws, or drops below half-time. And half-time is 6 credits. Okay. So there's also the federal Parent Plus loan, and that's a loan that a parent takes out for a dependent student. The interest rate on these Parent Plus loans right now are about 5%. The interest rate changes every year, but it is a fixed interest rate. So for academic year 21-22, if you take out, your students take out a Stafford loan, or you, the parent, take out a Parent Plus loan, the interest rates are fixed. They're not variable. Parent Plus loan goes into repayment while the student is in school, although you can defer payment while they are in school. I just want you to remember that interest is accruing. All of these loans, they have a repayment of 10 years. If you want to take out the Stafford loans or the Parent Plus loans, the Stafford loans, the students will need to complete something called a master promissory note, which is something that they sign saying that they promise to repay. And they'll also have to do something called entrance counseling. And entrance counseling goes over their rights and responsibilities as a borrower. If you, the parent, want to take out a Parent Plus loan, you also will have to complete a master promissory note saying that you promise to repay. There's also private and alternative loans. These loans go through private companies. So you may even receive solicitation from Sally Mae or Nelnet offering you alternative loans. What I want you to be aware of on the alternative loans is the interest rates aren't fixed, and they have no ceiling in most cases. So when you're deciding, well, do I want to borrow an alternative loan or a Parent Plus loan? The benefit for the parents on taking out the alternative loan is the student is the borrower and a parent would be a co-signer. You and I both know if we're co-signing, we're still responsible for that loan. The interest rate may be very low right now, but with no ceiling or no cap, we don't know where that interest rate will be years to But again, the private or alternative loans are in the student's name, and the Parent Plus loan is a loan in the parent's name. There is one alternative loan that I really like because it has a fixed interest rate, and that's the Css loan. And it's the Connecticut Higher Education Loan Authority. So it's www.chesla.com. And again, it's the Css loan. It would be in the student's name, and the interest rate is fixed. So I really, really love that. My niece went to Bentley and she took out Css loans. So good loans. There's also employment out there. So when I talk to freshman parents, a lot of them are like, oh, you know, I don't want Tim working. Well, I'm here to tell you something else I do at UConn is I mentor and I advise students in academic trouble. And if they're working, it helps them time manage. So it's actually beneficial for them to work. So there's two types of work on campus. There's either federal work study, which means that they've shown a financial need and the financial aid office has awarded your student federal work study funds. So they can go out and earn a certain amount of money while they're on campus, which is really beneficial for you because then you're not getting phone calls quite often saying, hey, I need money. Now, if they're not awarded work study, I don't want you to worry. They can still get a job on campus. They would just have to look for a job under student labor, okay? Or I don't know what your university would call it, but it wouldn't be federal work study. It would be the other option. Okay. So how do we determine aid eligibility? There's ultimately two components within the calculation. And the first component is cost of attendance, or COA. And COA also has two components, a direct and an indirect cost. So a direct costs are tuition and fees, room and board, what you see on your fee bill. And indirect costs are books and transportation expenses and anything miscellaneous, such as pens and pencils, notebooks, shampoo and conditioner, we even throw in there. So when you're talking to an admissions office, they are only going to discuss with you the direct costs, the tuition and fees, room and board, what you see on the fee bill. As a financial aid office, the feds allow us to increase or inflate the cost of attendance to include everything, which is actually very beneficial in determining financial need. So when you talk to admissions, they're going to tell you it's $20,000. When you talk to a financial aid office, they're going to tell you it costs $24,000 to attend. So just know that there is a difference in cost of attendance depending on who you're talking with. Because when you get your financial aid package, you'll probably notice that you have been awarded more than the direct costs. And that is because some people do need to borrow for books, or they're flying from California to Connecticut, they need to buy plane tickets, so forth, so on. So I would advise you to only borrow exactly what you need and to not borrow for indirect costs if you can at all help that, okay? The next component in determining financial need is something called the expected family contribution, or the EFC. And I like to think of this as a magic number because each and every one of you are going to complete your FAFSA form, and the federal processor is going to give you this number called an expected family contribution. And that is, it's what I'm supposed to tell you, it's a measure of a family's financial strength towards subsidizing an education for 1 year. That's what I'm supposed to tell you. I'm here to tell you it's a magic number, but they're going to take into consideration students' income, parents' income, assets, family members, number of people in household, how many people are in college, and they come up with this number. Okay. So in determining financial need, what this chart or this slide ultimately shows you is cost of attendance is variable. It is going to be dependent on the institution that you're applying to. but the EFC is the constant. That's going to follow you no matter which school or college you're applying to. All right. So like, let's say the blue is, I'm going to call it Yale, although Yale is about what, 70, 80,000 right now. But if you were, applying to Yale and you had a $7,000 EFC, you'd have university grant dollars, you'd have a subsidized loan, you'd have federal work study funds. Let's call the gray bar UConn. So with a $7,000 EFC at UConn, you also get university grant dollars. I don't know if you'd get federal work study, but you would definitely get subsidized loans. All right. Let's say your child decides to go to one of the community colleges and you have a $7,000 EFC. There won't be any grant dollars, and based on this math, your child would have $1,000 in subsidized loan and would have to take out the rest in unsubsidized. So again, need is different. Cost of attendance is definitely a variable, and the EFC is the constant. Hopefully I haven't lost anybody. So in determining financial aid eligibility, there's a couple things that students have to meet. The first one is that they have to be a US citizen or an eligible non-citizen. They have to be enrolled in an eligible program. They have to maintain while they're in school something called SAP, or Satisfactory Academic Progress. And what this means is they need to maintain a certain GPA. Freshmen, they'd have to maintain a 1.8, and then going forward a 2.0 in order to keep receiving their financial aid privileges. And there's also something that I just want to make the parents aware of within SAP is the students have to complete a minimum of 67% of their cumulative attempted credits. So let's say they start off with 12 credits and they drop a class, and they drop that class, they drop a 3-credit class, so now they have 9 credits. That's 75%, they're over that 67%. Let's say they start off with 12 and they drop down to 6 credits, which is half time. They're going to be below that 67% minimum that they have to maintain in order to keep receiving financial aid. So what would happen is whatever school they attend, they would be cited and they could appeal, but if the appeal isn't approved, then they won't be eligible for financial aid. So I just want to give the parents that information, because a lot of freshman parents aren't aware of SAP. So when you're talking to your son or daughter and they call you and say, oh man, I'm not doing good in my calculus class and my chemistry, and I'm going to drop them, and it's going to put them under that 67%, you'll know how to counsel them. And if I were you, I would tell them to contact their academic advisor ASAP to see if there's another class they can get into, or if they can get tutoring to at least try to keep one of the classes. The feds have just changed. Oh, yeah, I just have one more on that slide. The feds have changed where selective service registration for males, that's new. Ultimately, males have to be registered with selective service, but the feds are in the process of changing that. So they're still going to ask if your son is registered with selective service, but it's not necessarily a requirement anymore that they do so in order to receive financial aid. Okay. So when you need to go out and apply for financial aid, this is the screen you're going to see. You're going to go to studentaid.gov. And this is, once again, this is just, if you're new or a returning user, this is the screen that you're going to see when you're applying. And we're going to go through all those screens, lucky you. But when you first log on, in order to complete the FAFSA application, and that's an application that students and parents must complete in order to apply for financial aid, it opens up on October 1. So I've given Sharon some worksheets, so you'll be able to, complete it on your own beforehand. She'll email those to you. But the first thing that you're going to have to do is the students and the parents have to apply for an FSA ID. And this is an ID number that students and parents use to log on to the federal system. You're going to use that FSA ID to sign applications. You're going to use that FSA ID to sign master promissory notes. So I have a piece of paper in my cabinet that I break out once a year when I'm completing when my son and I are completing the FAFSA. So I remember what the heck is our FSA IDs, because they make them, they're a little different than maybe other IDs that you use. And we have to keep so many passwords and IDs in our heads anyway. So I keep that piece of paper in my cabinet and I know exactly where it is. And I know in about 2 weeks, I'm going to be going to that cabinet and grabbing that piece of paper. But you tonight or tomorrow can go out to studentaid.gov and you can, both you and your student can apply for your FSA IDs. Okay. So this is a great slide and I just want you to keep it, just for ha-has, because this is really the documents that you're going to need to apply. So when you're completing your FAFSA, it's going to want your name, which is the name that's on your social security card, your date of birth and your address. It's going to ask for your social security number. It's going to ask for the parent social security number, the driver's license numbers, your federal tax information, and you're going to be looking at your 2020 tax return. Okay. And I also want you to have your W-2 forms. You need to have your W-2 forms from 2020. So those documents need to be in front of you. All right. And then also any records of untaxed income, such as child support received, interest income, but it should all be included within your tax return. All right. So how do you apply for financial aid? How do you apply for grants and loans and work opportunities? Well, the senior parents are going to be completing the 22-23 FAFSA. It becomes available at studentaid.gov on October 1. You're going to, again, need your 2020 parent and student financial information. That would be a tax return, and make sure you have your W-2 forms. And then we're going to talk about the Irs Data Retrieval tool as well. For you junior parents, you won't be completing this application. You will be completing the 23-24 application next year at this time. And you'll be using your 21 tax information, which you haven't even filed yet, I don't believe. So, just to keep that in mind. So I think with this, like if we could switch over to the FAFSA on the web, because what I want to do is I want to show you exactly what you're going to see when you're filling out the FAFSA. Now, I also want to let you know that there's another form called the Css Profile. So if your son or daughter is interested in applying to private institutions like BC's, Boston College, Providence College, so those Brown University, I'm just trying to think off the top of my head. So they're going to require a form, not only the FAFSA, but they're also going to require a form called the Css Profile. So Css Profile is a lot more complicated than the FAFSA. The FAFSA is going to ask you general information. The Css Profile wants to know what kind of car you drive, what kind of, how much home equity you have in your home. That's the Css Profile. They get very intricate. They want to know every detail. The FAFSA form does not. It's very general, where the Css Profile is very specific. So I just want you to keep that in mind. And when determining what schools or colleges your sons or daughters are applying to, you'll need to also figure out, do I just have to fill out a FAFSA? Do I also have to fill out a CSS profile? Is there an institutional application? So yeah, we can go to the next screen. So studentaid.gov. You're gonna come to this. You're gonna go up to the top where it says apply for aid, and it's gonna say complete the FAFSA form. So you're gonna click on complete the FAFSA form. We'll go to the next screen. So it's going to say, oh, you want to complete the FAFSA form. Are you new to the process, or are you returning user? For right now, we're new to the process. So we'll click that. And so now it says, tell me about yourself. Are you a student? Are you a parent? Are you a preparer? So obviously we're not a preparer. I don't want you to pay anybody to fill out this form for you. If you are having trouble filling out the form, you can contact your guidance office. We have a red phone. I know Sharon has my cell number, so she can text me and I will help her, or I will contact you. So you do not need to pay anyone to help you fill out this form, okay? So when filling out this form, you really need to make sure that your student is there with you. So I encourage each and every one of you to make sure that your children are involved in this process. So you're clicking on the student, and I want access to the FAFSA form, log in to continue, or you can create an Fsa Id. But so here you enter your personal identifiers, and this again is exactly what you're going to see, okay, when you're in there. So if you notice, you have to put in your Fsa Id, and then the password you create, and then you log in. So I want to show you this because I know people are going to make a mistake here. There's 2 applications out there as of October 1. There's the current academic year that we're currently in, the 21-22 academic year, and then there's the upcoming application that will be out there on October 1, the 22-23 application. Okay, so I just want you to keep in mind when you go out there on October 1 that you're going to be, at least you senior parents, you're going to be completing the 22-23 application. Okay, and so you're going to start the 22-23. And what I want to explain as we go through this is that the student section and the parent section pretty much mirror each other. Okay, today for this application, I'm going to show you like how to enter in the demographic information. But when it comes to the financial information, I only have the screens for the parents, but I want you to, for the parent section, but I want you to realize that the students have the exact same screens, okay? But so you're going to enter in your personal identification information, social security number, your name. So this is where I want you to have the social security card in front of you, because you have to, this is the student's information. You have to make sure that the student's name on the social security card is the same that you're entering into the FAFSA application. Reason being, the federal processor does a match. They do a check with the Social Security Administration. So when you put down the information, it's then going to send this information to Social Security. And if things don't match, then your application is rejected. So I definitely want to make sure that you are prepared. And I mean, I can tell you, I know that some of you parents are going to do this for your students. I can't even say I haven't done that for my students. So I won't lie to you. But when filling out this section, a lot of times the parents will put the student's social security number and then the parent's name, or, you know, the student's social security number, the student's name, and then the parent's date of birth. So just make sure when you are in the student section that the student's information is what goes in. Another thing I want to mention in this section is don't use nicknames. So my daughter's name is Alexandra. And that's what's on her social security card. Everyone calls her Allie. So we could, if I didn't know better, put in her name is Allie and her last name is Hanlon, and then this application would be rejected. So just be sure to do not use nicknames and use the name on the social security card. Yeah, so this is self-explanatory. So the student's email, the phone number, your permanent address, not the school address, but the actual permanent address. Student's residency. So they're going to ask, have you lived in Connecticut? Has Johnny lived in Connecticut for at least the last 5 years? More than likely, Johnny's always lived in Connecticut. So yes. Now, I also want to just bring to your attention that there's a question mark at the end of every single line. So if you don't understand something, click the question mark, because that's the help tool. And it is very helpful. So if you have a question on any question, I definitely advise you to click the question bar. So it just wants to know, when did you become a legal resident? So you become a legal resident after a year of being, living in the state. So just so you're aware of that. You just keep moving on. It's so simple so far, right? Then it wants to know about the student education. Now, I know they don't have a high school diploma yet for those that are going through their senior year, but they will when they enter the 22-23 school year. So yes, they'll have a high school diploma. They're going to be going for their first bachelor's. Do you have a bachelor's degree before? That's more than likely no. And are you interested in being considered for work study? I would definitely click yes, because the worst thing that will happen is you don't have eligibility, but you should definitely apply for everything. So here we go. So this is the selective service, which they're in the process of changing, where it says most male citizens and immigrants must register for a selective service to receive financial aid. So, and just so you know that when males turn 18, they're supposed to register for selective service. So you move on to the next, and they just want the driver's license information. Next. So is the student in foster care? And then they want to know about the parent's education. Have you ever received federal student aid? Now, this year you're filling this out blank for the first time. Next year, when your child is going to be a sophomore in college and they're applying for the 23-24 academic year, you're going to get something called a renewal form. So all of this information will already be completed. The only thing you'll have to do is go back in and update the income information. So this is where you just add in, like, what high school did you attend? And again, it's a search engine. So here you start typing something in, and then it will give you a whole bunch of choices, and you click the one that works for you, and you're confirming your high school. So far, if you're doing this, so far 5 minutes has gone by. It does not take long. So next they want the college search. So this is where you can put in up to 10 colleges. All right, so you go through, it's a search engine, and we can go through the slides to see the search engine, but you enter in the colleges. This is the information that you want your FAFSA data to be sent to, whatever colleges your child's applying to. On this application, they're going to allow up to 10 colleges. Let's say your child wants to apply to 12 colleges. So you need this information sent to 12 colleges. You're going to complete you're going to enter in the first 10. You're going to complete the application that we're going to walk through. You're going to sign it and submit it. The federal processor at some point will send back an email to the student telling them that they've processed your application. At that point, you can log back into the FAFSA at studentaid.gov, delete the first 10, and then add another 2. Make sure you go to the end where it says sign and submit, you'd have to sign and submit again. And then the federal processor will also have the information for the other 2. That way, 12 schools get your information. Okay. When applying to schools, you pretty much want to choose a housing code that their student's going to live on or off campus. It gives you a higher cost of attendance. Okay. So the student's marital status, I would say if they're 18, you're going to put single. And then push continue. So this is where I have a lot of conversations with incoming freshman parents, because they come to me and they say, you know, I just took care of Tim for 18 years and now I'm done. So I don't want my information placed on this FAFSA application because Tim is going to be on his own. What I can tell you is the way the feds look at it is parents have the primary responsibility to cover post-secondary education. So unless you can answer yes to one of the dependency questions, and we'll go through them now, the parent information is going to be required on this form. So the feds want to know, does Tim have any legal dependents? Meaning, do they have any children? More than likely, they're going to say no. Here's the additional dependency questions. Are you currently serving in active duty? More than likely, they're going to say no. Are you a veteran of the armed forces? More than likely, they're going to say no. At the time you turned 13, were both your parents deceased or were you in foster care? More than likely, you would answer no to that as well. It wants to know if you're an emancipated minor, and there you'd have to have court paperwork. So those more than 99.5% of students answer none of the above, okay? Which means the parental information is going to be required. It also is going to ask if the student is homeless, okay? So, you know, is your guidance office certifying that the student is homeless? More than likely they're going to say no, but there are some cases where the guidance office certifies that. So ultimately, if you answer no to all those questions, you are required to provide information about your parents. And then you would continue. So this is where we come to the different circumstances about who fills out the FAFSA. If the student's parents are married or not married, but living together, like common law, then both parents fill out the FAFSA. If the parents are divorced, then you need to determine which student the parent, or which parent the student lives with more than 50%. All right. And I know there's a lot of, in divorce situations, there's a lot of joint custody where everyone has 50% on paper, but there's always one parent that has them a little bit more than the other in most circumstances. So you would have to choose which parent the student lives with more than 50%. And then it would be that parent that completes the FAFSA. Now, some circumstances you have divorced parents, you have mom and dad, both divorced, and let's say the student lives with mom more than 50% of the time, and mom is remarried. Step parents' information is going to be required. Or vice versa, if student lives with dad more than 50% of the time and dad is remarried, then stepmom's information will also be required. And the Fed's philosophy on this is that although the student may not receive financial support from the step parent, the student does benefit from the step parent living in the household. So, and that's just the Fed's philosophy. I'm just letting you know. So that's that. Those are the different situations. And if you have a situation that you wanted to talk to me privately about, you can contact Sharon and she can contact me. So So now we just, again, it's demographic information. So parents' marital status. Now, if parents are divorced, but then whoever's information is going on here is remarried, then you'd put yourself as married, remarried. And then when did that happen? So you just enter the first parent's information. Again, this is just their social security number, your name, and it's whatever's on the social security card. And then the other parent, which could be father, mother, or step parent. The legal, legal residence again. So we're just going to go through all this. Then it says enter the information for your parents' dependents. So you can include dependents, dependent children. So who's living in your household? Do you have, and so the question I want you to ask yourself when you're saying who lives in my household is, who do you contribute more than 50% of their support to? So if you have elderly parents living with you, you can include them as long as you can justify and certify that you contribute to more than 50% of their well-being. If your son or daughter has a friend living in your house right now because they got into a fight with their parents and you're contributing more than 50% of the support to that child, you can include them in your household. Okay, but the key is, who do you contribute more than half of their support to? All right, so that's what I always want you to keep in mind. So again, this is just going over your parents' dependents or the parent dependents. So number in college. So out of the people that you've just included in your household, who attends college? Now, if the parent is completing, if the parent is in school at least half time, unfortunately, they cannot be included in the number in college. But if you, the parent, are filling out a FAFSA, you can include your child who will be attending college and yourself. But if you're filling this out for the student, you cannot include yourself, the parent, as a member in the household that's attending college. So here we get, so this is the part where we're going to get into the tax information. And what we look at here, there's the same section under student financials. Okay, right now we're at the parent financials. The next section would be student financials. It's the exact same questions, but for time's sake and for how large this file was, I had to delete the student screens. Just know that the student screens are the same as the parents. So they want to know, what form did you file? Or have you already filed? Since we go back 2 years, 99.5% of everybody's already filed. And then they want to know, what form did you file? Now, they also said here, you're going to have a choice. You're going to have a choice to either use your tax forms that I've told you to keep next to you, your W-2 forms and your 2020 tax forms, or you're going to be able to use the IRS Data Retrieval tool. Now, let me explain the difference. If you're going to just take the information from your tax forms, you're going to go in and data entry all the information. If you decide to use the IRS Data Retrieval tool, there's screens that I'm going to show you coming up where we're actually going to leave the FAFSA site for a minute. We're going to go into the IRS's database and you're going to import the tax information from the IRS's database. Let me explain though the difference. If you, hi RJ, if you use your tax forms and don't use the IRS Data Retrieval tool, you're actually going to see the information that you input. If you use the IRS Data Retrieval tool, you will not be able to see the information that the IRS is importing into the FAFSA. Okay. I always data entry myself. Because I don't know how much I trust the IRS data, I don't know how much I trust them. It's all a personal choice. What I will say, if you use the IRS Data Retrieval tool and you're chosen for a process called verification, which we'll go into coming up in a little bit. No, then, oh my God. So if you use the Irs Data Retrieval tool and you're picked for verification, then you won't have to submit a whole bunch of documents that the school is going to request. If you data entry everything yourself and you're picked for verification, you're going to have to submit documents to your school's financial aid office. So do you want to have to deal with paperwork or not? And do you trust the IRS to import the right information or not? So it's kind of a catch-22. I just want to make you aware of every option. Okay. So if you want to use the Irs Data Retrieval tool, and there are lots and lots and lots, hundreds of thousands of people that use the Irs Data Retrieval tool, you can do so if you're picked for verification. It's going to be a really easy process because the IRS has sent the correct information, and the school is going to just believe that. So if so, you click proceed to the IRS. It's the parent login for the Irs Data Retrieval. This is what the screen's going to look like. This is also what the student sees when they do it. It says that okay, now we're going to be leaving your FAFSA form because we're proceeding to the IRS's website. And so here we go. It says U.S. government system is for authorized use only. You click OK, and this is where you're going to get your federal income tax information, and then you're going to submit it. And this is all the information that they double check with your FAFSA. And so it's going to say to you, transfer now or do not transfer. So if you want to use this Irs Data Retrieval tool, you need to choose the option that says transfer now. Okay. So if you choose not to use the IRS's data retrieval tool, this is where you're going to actually enter in your tax information manually. And if you look at the bottom of the bottom right before the box, it says the amount, because they want to know your adjusted gross income for 2020. And it says the amount is found on the IRS form 1040, and it tells you even what line to look at. So it's very easy to data entry all this yourself. But so that's where you would put in your adjusted gross income. Next one. Uh-oh.
Sorry, I'm having trouble clicking to the next slide.
That's okay.
I don't know why. Hold on.
Yeah.
Oh, there we go.
There we go. So now it wants to know your the parent income from work. So where you're going to find that information, it says to you on the 1040 form line 1, but you can also find it on your W-2 form. Okay. We go to the next. Then it wants additional Irs info. So the amount of your parents' income tax, and it's going to tell you what lines to look at, so you know how to answer that question. So here it wants to know about, special income that you're gotten. So did you get combat pay? You don't have to worry about the college grants or scholarships line. Did you receive an educational credit? Well, if your child hasn't been to college yet, there wouldn't be any educational credits yet. So did you have any IRS distributions or pensions? And you can look on your 1040 form to see if you received any untaxed portions of an IRA distribution or a pension. Did your IRA deductions and payments to a self-employed SEP, a simple or KEOG plan, you'd need to put it in there. Did you receive any tax exempt income? And it tells you, look on line 2A of your tax return. So they want to know about other income that you may have gotten. So now it also wants to know, did you pay child support? Did you earn money under a cooperative education program? And these are all going to be 0, especially other than the child support possibly, but the last 2 would be if your students are already in school. So you don't have to worry about answering those. And always answer. So if you don't have an answer, be sure to always put a 0. So here's untaxed income. So did you receive child support for any of the children in your household? Did you receive any housing, food, or any other living allowances? So this is where I want you to use your W-2 form as well, because the third question is payments to a tax-deferred pension and retirement savings plan. So when you look at your W-2, there's going to be box 12A through 12D. You're going to look for codes D, E, F, G, H, and S. All right. And there also could be information in box 14 regarding any like tax deferred retirement plan if you're a teacher. So again, read through the question and you go to the W-2 form, but that's where you'd use your W-2 form. Did you receive any veterans non-educational benefits? Any other untaxed income not reported, such as workman's comp or disability benefits? Okay. So parents' assets. And again, they're going to ask the same thing of the students. It's very important that you try not to put too many assets in the student section because it's weighed very heavily. All right, so in the parents' asset section, it wants to know, did your parents, what's the total of your parents' current cash saving or checking account? What I'm here to tell you is that they want a snapshot of the day you're filling out this FAFSA. But they don't really know what your snapshot looks at. So if you're like me, you have a whole bunch of money at the beginning of the month, you pay your bills, and then at the end of the month, you don't have that much money. When filling out this section and answering that question, I would be putting down how much I have at the end of the month. All right. Then they want to know what is the net worth of your parents' investments, including real estate, but do not use your parents' home, which is, you know, if you, the parent, are doing this, then that's you. And so I am going to read to you what investments are. I have the paper FAFSA here in front of me, and I'm just going to read it. So investments include real estate, but do not include the home in which you live in. If you remember, the Css Profile wants to know how much home equity you have. The FAFSA does not. Okay. They want investments include trust funds, money market funds, mutual funds, certificates of deposit, stocks, stock options, bonds, other securities. Investments also include the qualified educational benefits, the 529 plans. So if you have any investments, you would need to put that amount here. Now, if your student has a 529 plan, the 529 plan is in your name. It is, the student is the beneficiary of it, but the 529 plan is in your name. Be careful to only include the 529 plan when you're filling out the assets section under the parents. Now, if I had met with all of you 18 years ago, I would have told each and every one of you, if you're going to do a 529 plan, have the grandparents do it, because then it would not have to be reported anywhere on this form. Okay, but so the 529 plans, make sure that you put it under parents' assets and not students, because it would be weighed very heavily. And then the last question about investments is, do your parents currently have a business? And that business would be if you have more than 100 employees, or do you have an investment farm? Again, you're not going to be using a preparer. I will help you if you need help. So you're going to answer no. And so, you know, then there's also the student section. The student section is going to ask the same financial questions that we just went through. They're going to have the same options of using the Irs Data Retrieval tool if they filed a 2020 FAFSA. But then you come to a part where it says sign and submit. So you went through the student demographics, the school section, the dependency status, the parent demographics, parent financials, student financials. You entered in your school codes that you got from a drop-down box, and now it's going to give you the Fafsa summary. Okay, so you're going to see this. And this is just going to give you a list of how you answered everything. Yep. So it just wants you to read before proceeding, which is, it's just going to make sure that you did everything, with your best estimate, that you're agreeing to the terms, and now you click sign. And then the student has to sign with their FSA ID, and then the parent will have to sign with their FSA ID. Again, make sure that you keep these FSA IDs, because if you lose them, it's quite difficult to get them reassigned. It's not impossible, but I will say, before I kept my piece of paper in my cabinet, I lost my piece of paper, and I was on the phone with the federal processor for a good hour reinstating an FSA ID. So if you can just make sure you never lose it. If you have other students in college, or if you have, let's say, upcoming senior now, and then you have a sophomore, you're going to be able to use this FSA ID for that other child as well, coming down the pike. Yep, so that here you're going to enter the parent's FSA ID. You sign the FAFSA form. Yep, congratulations, you did it. Now what they do too is the schools that you have chosen to have the application sent to, they give you certain information. So they're going to give you comparisons of the different schools that you're applying to, which I think is very beneficial. So if you need, so you're going to submit the application, you just did that. You can log back in to check its status. So if you look here, this says action required. So current application status, action required. You can have an action required, you can have a completed, you can have an in process. And then if you have action required, it's going to tell you what discrepancies they found in the application. And then they give you a button where you can go in and make a correction. They really simplified this whole process. And then congratulations, you're all set. What they do after this is they send you something called a student aid report, which you just keep for your records, and it just goes over everything that you entered into the system. Hopefully no one's too overwhelmed. I'm always overwhelmed giving this presentation. It's like I'm throwing so much information at you. So yep. So now I just want to go over once again in the general information, the demographic system. It's just you have to put in the student demographics, the parents demographics, the dependency status. They want to know parental educational background, your household information, the grade level for the student. So we can go to the next slide on that. There we go. So when you're filling out the student and the parent information section, you can utilize the Irs Data Retrieval tool. We went over, where you can use your own form, or you can use the retrieval tool. I want you to just know that the AGI is not always the same as the income earned from work on the W-2 form. And on the actual application, it's going to tell you what line to go to on the tax return if you decide not to use the Irs Data Retrieval tool. So again, the Irs Data Retrieval tool, we've already gone through all this. So here's income information section for untaxed income. If you remember, it says that it wanted you to include your annual IRA or pension contributions that you're going to find on a W-2 form. So they don't want to know how much your entire IRA or pension account is. They just want to know how much did you put in the year 2020. All right, you include workman's compensation, any untaxed disability, and any child support received. You don't include unemployment compensation. You don't include untaxed Social Security and any scholarship amounts received. So again, for the investment and asset information section, you do not include the net worth of your home. All right, they don't want to know how much home equity you have. They do not include your retirement accounts. So, you know, if you have $500,000 in a retirement account, they don't want to know that. The Css Profile will want to know that, but FAFSA does not want to know that. FAFSA just wants to know how much you contributed in the year 2020 to that retirement account. Okay, and you do not include the net worth of a family-owned business employing less than 100 people, or the net worth of a family farm in which you live. You do include your cash saving and checking account balances. Again, if I was filling out the form, I would just be putting in how much do I have at the end of the month. You do include the net worth of a rental or investment property. You do include the educational benefit, the savings accounts, the 529s. You do include the net worth of a family business that has over 100 employees and the net worth of an investment fund. We went over this, but I like to just reiterate that you can enter up to 10 school codes per FAFSA application. So again, if your child wants to have the information sent to more than 10 schools, then you're going to go through the application process, sign it, submit it. When they say they've processed it, you can go back in, delete the 10 that you put in, and add the new ones and resubmit. When choosing your school codes and where your child's living, I would always choose on or off campus because it increases the cost of attendance. And both the student and the parent must sign with their own Fsa IDs each time the application is submitted. So if you make corrections or you add new schools, you just have to always make sure that the Fsa IDs are used to sign each time, each transaction. So if you need help filling the FAFSA form, there's free tools. Again, there's the question box that you can add, the question mark. There's a FAFSA help page. You can also click, there's a contact us. You can contact the guidance office at East Windsor High, and I am more than happy to answer your questions. So what do you do after you file? So you complete your FAFSA. The federal processor is then going to determine that magic number, the expected family contribution. They're going to send the student aid report, which will include the EFC and any comments for you to review. Using your EFC, each prospective college is going to determine your financial needs. So they're going to give you a cost of attendance minus your EFC. That number is your financial need, and they're going to determine what aid they can offer your son or daughter. All right. So we're going to create a financial aid package. There's a couple of things that can happen. You could be chosen for a process called verification. This is a random process. The feds randomly select about 30% of the applications. If you've used the Irs Data Retrieval tool, you won't have to submit tax returns. But if you haven't used that, then the schools are going to be required to gather signed tax documents. And what we do is we take those documents and we review all the information that you put on your FAFSA for accuracy. All right. And then also there's something that we have dealt with in huge volumes because of COVID is special circumstances. So I know we've been talking about 2020 income, right? And then COVID hit. So let's say your 21 or even upcoming year 22 income is different than the 2020 reported income on this application, you will need to contact the financial aid office of each school that you're applying to find out their special circumstance process. Because as a financial aid office, we understand that your reported income is a year and a half, 2 years old, and that your current situation may be different. And we're willing to look at your current situation rather than just going off of the 2020 income. That's a special circumstance. So never decline aid you don't understand. I have a lot of freshman parents or students that will call my office and say, "Ooh, I declined the work study award, but now I understand what it is and I'd like it back." And I'm here to tell you, more than likely, if you've declined it, we can't get it back because we've awarded it to someone else. Okay. Always consider federal loans before private loans. And I would always ask that you consider the long-term cost of borrowing. And if you want to look at student loan repayment calculators, you can go to finaid.org and you'll find repayment calculators there. And you can take a look like, oh, you know what, I'm going to have to take out 3 Parent Plus loans at a total of, $40,000. What's my repayment going to look like? Or, my child's going to have to take out 4 years of their federal Stafford loans. And so they're going to have to borrow, $25,000. What's that going to look like? You can go to that repayment calculator and it will give you an idea. Okay. So I just threw a whole bunch of information at you in an hour and 5 minutes, which is probably like my best streak ever. You people are very lucky that I'm not talking to you for 2 hours. Because I've done it before. Sharon can attest, I have done it before. So I've just thrown so much information at you. Does anyone have any questions? All right, well, you know what? You may wake up in the morning and have 10 questions. I would ask that you contact your guidance office, and so Sharon can get back to me at that time.
I do have a question.
Oh, good. I love questions. Thanks, Leo.
Yeah, no problem. So you mentioned the CSS profile. So I'm just trying to understand. So my daughter is going to apply to UConn, and so I'm trying to understand. Obviously, Fafsa makes sense, timing of that, but what about the CSS profile? When would I be looking to complete that, and where can I get that?
So if she's just applying to UConn, we only require the FAFSA form. So the CSS profile would not be required. If she's going to apply to like a private institution, like I said, like the Boston College, Providence College, and those are just 2 small examples. And the guidance office should have a list, or you can go out on the, collegeboard.org. And you can go to the College Board and you can search the schools that are going to require the CSS profile. One thing I didn't mention, and I want to, is the FAFSA form is a free form. You do not need to pay to submit this form. The CSS profile, you have to pay for each school you want your information sent to. So that's another difference with the CSS profile. But if you are just applying to FAFSA schools, you don't have to complete the CSS profile. And I'm sure that your guidance office would be a great resource to help you figure that out. Or you can also go to the College Board to help determine if you do have to figure out if you have to apply to the CSS profile. Or you can go to each college's financial aid websites, and they're going to tell you there's going to be a section for getting started. And you click that on and it's going to tell you, hey, we only require the FAFSA, or you're going to have to complete the FAFSA, the CSS profile, and an institutional application. Like, it's going to tell you what application to submit. The portal for the 22-23 academic year opens up on October 1. I would encourage everyone to not put it off and get close to on-time deadlines. Fill it out. It's not hard. I just showed you everything. So you're not going to be surprised at all. And I also gave Sharon a, and I assume you're going to email everybody it, but it's FAFSA on the web worksheet. So you can actually like pre-fill it out so you know what questions they're going to be looking for. And that will be a great tool to help you feel more prepared. Did I answer your question, Leo? I don't know. I go
Yeah,
off
thank
on
you very
tangents.
much. No, that was great. I want to know about this. So now I totally understand that, but obviously
Okay.
there was more information there, so thank you.
Yep, you're welcome. So again, for any of you junior parents, anything that I just mentioned, you're just going to tack on a year. Okay, Sharon, anything else that you think I forgot?
No, I think that was great, and it was good time. I thought for a second you might make it in under an hour, but
Gosh,
but it was very good. And then, as you said, either Mrs. Walker or myself will be emailing out some information that you have provided. Most likely is going to come from Mrs. Walker because my email does not seem to want to send mass emails out. So she'll be sending that out, and then we'll of course make the presentation available at some point as well. But if nobody else has any questions, I think we're good. And we thank you for coming, and then definitely reach out to Nicole or I if you have any questions, and we can certainly get in touch with Suzanne. So hopefully you found this helpful, and we're definitely here to help. And thank you to Suzanne for year 11 or 12 or 13 or whatever we're on.
Yep. My pleasure. My pleasure. I love seeing your smiling face. And you parents are in great hands. The guidance office is well taken care of. It's well run. So you guys are well taken care of.
Thank you.
Okay, everybody stay well.
Everybody, thank you.
Thank you.